The Mandalorian has this way of giving you what you weren't expecting, what you weren't hoping for, but once it gives it to you, you're like, you couldn't think of any other way and to do it. Like, they always give you exactly what you need, not necessarily what you want. I'm John Barry, and welcome to my review of The Mandalorian Chapter 16, The Rescue. So this is the season finale of Season 2, so the overall episode, so it's Season 2, Episode 8. Simple enough, right? Yep. But we're going to talk about this at the end. Spoilers ahead, of course. But there's a reason why I think, and other people I've seen speculate this, why the episodes are given chapter numbers as well as episode numbers. There's a reason. We're going to talk to that though later on in this review. First of all, we get the rescue of Grogu. But first, we stop off to pick up Bo-Katan and played by Katie Sackhoff, I think is her name. And then Sasha Banks is Mandalorian character, whose name I don't remember. It's probably in the credits somewhere. But so Din and Boba go to pick them up. There's tension going on with Boba Fett and Sasha Banks' character get into a fight. Bo-Katan says, hey, if we spent this much energy fighting the Empire instead of ourselves, we would have not fallen. So it implies that infighting is what partially led to the Empire's defeat over the Mandalorians. And also Boba Fett does say he never claimed to be a Mandalorian. And that is actually correct. If we go back 2 episodes ago, all he really was claiming that armor was his father's, who was a Mandalorian foundling, and because the armor was his father's, is his right of inheritance. That's pretty much all he claimed. Din is the one who's like, okay, yep, you're a Mandalorian now. Din accepted that pretty much no problem. And with Bo-Katan, it's also very likely that part of her distrust of Boba Fett is because he is a clone. Because, the clones were the ones who initially occupied the Empire, occupied Mandalore for the Empire, and were the ones who betrayed the Jedi, and all that. So, she hears Boba Fett's voice, and she's like, thinking back to when Mandalore first fell to the Empire. So it makes sense that why she wouldn't consider Boba Fett a Mandalorian, because to her, Boba Fett's just another clone. She wouldn't know that, like we do, that Boba Fett is an unaltered clone of Jango. Yeah, still technically a clone, but that Jango raised Boba to be his son, not to be another clone of him, but to be his son. So, and that's something we know about Boba. Bo-Katan probably doesn't know that. Really, the only other person who probably did know is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he might have told Anakin, but still, not many people probably knew that Boba Fett was supposed to be... Well, actually, probably most of the Jedi did, because Obi-Wan probably told them. But yeah, Bo-Katan probably does not know that. And even then, would they count a clone as a Mandalorian? Bo-Katan doesn't seem to be so. While she's maybe more open than Din on who can be a Mandalorian, she apparently does draw the line at clones. And whether or not she considers Jango Fett Mandalorian is a whole nother matter as well. But that's something neither here or there. But that's just something interesting. Because this episode, the series as a whole, has asked the question, what does it mean to be a Mandalorian? And this interaction, while short, I think is pretty important. And then we also get other scenes with Bo-Katan where she says, Moff Gideon's mine, he needs to surrender to me, blah, blah, blah. And that's setting up for something that will happen later. Because remember, Din has a pure Beskar spear. So, yeah, draw your own conclusions. But when they come up with this plan to, sneak aboard, or not to sneak aboard, to board Gideon's light cruiser using an Imperial shuttle they capture, which is the former, which actually just happened before Boba Fett and Din pick up Bo-Katan. But they captured an Imperial shuttle with Dr. Pushing on it, who's established to be a clone engineer. And we had this great interaction between the two Imperial pilots. One of them's clearly Zero just because he's still Zero, hasn't defected yet, or not, because he was perfectly willing to make a deal until he was shot by his co-pilot, who was apparently on the Death Star, on Death Star 1, it's implied, though, and taunts Cara Dune for it because Cara Dune's an Alderaanian. So, but yeah, some great interaction there. And also we got to see that when Cara shots the guy who was trying to hold his own passenger hostage to save his own life, apparently. I don't know what he was trying to do, but Cara Dune shots that TIE pilot, and Dr. Pershing covers his ear, and it's like, yeah, blaster bolts are apparently rated out, but I really did that. That's just a small little thing that I think was so great that they included. Another, just a small little great tidbit with Dr. Pershing they've done later is established that he's clearly not a huge fan of the Empire. He's working for them, but it's clearly like he's willing to give up information about Moff Gideon, his light cruiser, everything. Like, he even tells them where the Dark Troopers are, and established that the Phase 3 Dark Troopers entirely droids, no humans. So they're pretty much just lifting the lore of Dark Troopers from Legends, from Dark Forces and all that. And actually, I really do like that. I never played Dark Forces personally. I haven't. I have it on my old computer, but I've just never got around to playing it. But I do kind of like how they're drawing in a little bit from Legends, and it also implies that the DT droids that we saw in Rebels are maybe a prototype for DT, Dark Trooper. I have a feeling they were somehow connected to the Dark Trooper program as well, but not that these Dark Troopers are beasts. That's an apt description because the Secret Service nicknames the President's limo, the President of the United States' limo that they used to carry him around, the Beast, because of how armored it is. And these Dark Troopers, they can take a beating. Literally, the only thing that didn't get to fight one of them, because he blew the rest out of the airlock, but they made sure he fought one. Seems like heat they're somewhat susceptible to heat, but not that. But the Beskar spear goes right through them, but they're blaster resistant. Makes me wonder, not that they're made of Beskar, but if they have like a small, alloy that's partially made of Beskar, like very minute, like less than 1% purity kind of deal, enough to give it blaster resistance. And there are the blaster resistant materials like Kurtosis, which is canon, I believe, or still canon. I think it's been recanonized in one of the Swan books. But so there are other materials, but tiny bit of those with some Beskar, you probably could create some pretty good armor. And we know also that the scales of the Zilla Beast, for all we know, the Empire managed to actually make some armor out of them. I'm just throwing that out there, but I'm getting kind of off track. But then, on his way to rescue Baby Yoda, does fight one Dark Trooper and jettisons the rest into space, which is set up later for when the Dark Troopers reboard the light cruiser. But speaking of how they got aboard the light cruiser, they use a commandeered Imperial shuttle, and they decide to stage a fake attack where Boba Fett's piloting, the Slave One firing at them, and they're going to land in the shuttle, which establishes a launch tube for the TIE fighters. And the hangar is very small, so it makes sense that there's a launch tube, even though there's also other ways in and out. But I have a feeling that's done to help, get them up to speed, I guess. I don't know. There's been other material in Legends, I think, and some fan, and maybe even can have established that launch tubes are used by the Empire. And that actually would make sense if you have a very small hangar bay where space is at a premium. Having some kind of launch tube does make some sense. And also, so they just get aboard, and so the Boba Fett flies off, of course, because he was the diversion in a sense. But so Bo-Katan and Sasha Banks' character, along with Cara Dune and Fennec, are basically storming the Mandalorian, the cruiser. I keep on mixing my words up. But they get all the way up to the bridge, and Moff Gideon's not there. Meanwhile, Din is sneaking on his way to the bridge to rescue Baby Yoda, destroys that one Dark Trooper droid and destines the rest to space, and finally arrives at Grogu's cell, and guess who's there holding the Darksaber over Grogu's head? That's right, Gideon, who lures the Mandalorian to a false sense of security. Probably he shouldn't have told Gideon that the child meant so much to him in the previous episode. I knew it would come back to bite him. But anyhow, so Moff Gideon basically attacks, negates on his word that, yes, if you leave me be here, I'll let you take Baby Yoda. Yeah, I mean, I didn't trust Gideon a minute. It's like, he has something up his sleeve. Yeah, he is. He attacks the Mandalorian then with a lightsaber, then defends himself using his Beskar gauntlets and the spear. And he successfully disarms Gideon, becoming the possessor of the Darksaber, which is going to set up some conflict with Bo-Katan, but he he heads to the bridge with Moff Gideon, his prisoner, and with Grogu, and then it was perfectly willing just to hand the Darksaber over to Bo-Katan, which I can say, so I know exactly, that would have been an exact repeat of Star Wars Rebels. Because if you remember, Bo-Katan, she did not own the Darksaber in combat. It was given to her by Sabine, who did, win in combat in a sense against the Gar Saxon. So if anyone actually has a claim to it, it's either, technically, Sabine and Din technically are the legitimate possessors. We can almost compare this to the Elder Wand from Harry Potter, who's the legitimate master, all of that, but it's kind of like, technically, yes, while Sabine gave up her right to, her claim to the Darksaber, technically she never lost it in combat, so she still has a claim to it. Meanwhile, Bo-Katan's like, she could accept it again, but not really own it in combat, which she probably sees as somewhat of a mistake in a sense. Feels like she probably thinks that maybe if she had owned it in combat, she would have successfully united the Mandalorians against the Empire. I have a feeling a lot of why she refuses to accept it from Din is because she feels like she made a mistake not owning it in combat. Because I think Din would be perfectly willing at throwing the fight, so at least it appears that way for everyone else. Because he is, okay, I yield, before any kind of fight. She didn't go for it, but yeah. And then the Dark Troopers come back. Yeah. Oh, and Gideon hides the blaster that was left on the floor. Always kick blasters away from prisoners. Or make sure they don't land near a blaster you previously kicked away. But so, Dark Troopers come back, they're pounding on the blasters, giving them a beating, and a lone X-Wing shows up. I was honestly not expecting that, and I'm like, they're not doing that, are they? No, they have, yeah, they're really doing it. And I liked how it was into the bridge we got to see the pilot's face. But you could tell from what scenes that we got who it was. That's right, Luke Skywalker. And according to the credits, Mark Hamill played him. Probably they did do some CGI de-aging. Looks pretty good. Also, though, I do want to say, it almost sounded like they lifted some of his previous lines from like Return of the Jedi and such. It just had that impression to me. But they did a very good job of making it look like a younger Luke. And for all we know, they might have used Mark Hamill as a voice and just gotten a body double and use CGI for on set, which is also very much a possibility. Which I think actually might be a better possibility because Luke would have been leaked. Come on, I have a feeling they probably used a double on set. Either that or they really kept it they kept it a very close trust circle for that episode, for this season finale, which is also a possibility. But I wouldn't be surprised if there could have been some trickery involved to get everything to work out just right. But it was clearly Mark Hamill's voice, there was no doubt about that. And he destroys the Dark Troopers, which is good. They, in a way, want to a powerful enough antagonist that puts our actual heroes at threat, but the rescue will can easily deal with. Luke does make sense. Probably Ahsoka would have done fine as well. Same thing with Cal Kestis and Ezra Bridger, but they're not here. And so Luke. And also this makes sense. This is Luke between Return of the Jedi and his failure with Ben and his exile on Acto. So, and we're giving him a point he can go all out on, kind of in contrast to how that he doesn't have to feel sorry for because they're droids. So I have a feeling he probably would still feel like, I wouldn't be surprised if Luke is the kind of, is part of the group who would be still feel somewhat sorry for the Mandalorian droids, like thinking, if they had just been, programmed differently, everything would have gone so much better kind of a deal. But, though that is kind of just wild speculation, but I do think part of what they decided to do was to show a Luke that is in between, who can easily dismantle the threat, but still without compromising his choices he's made in previously. But he still, set somewhat on the path that of the future. He does crush one of the droids with the Force, one of the Dark Trooper droids with the Force, which I think is kind of a telling thing to do. And he does take Grogu, but Grogu needs Din's permission before he goes, and it's just so cute. I mean, the only way it could have been cute would have been if there was some cats running around on set that were just sitting around being all cute, but I doubt they would have done that. And R2-D2 shows up, and I gotta say, the best parts of this cameo appearance. And it almost made me, I almost wonder, does R2 recognize Grogu? And could Grogu have recognized R2-D2? Because it's always possible. Grogu, I recognize that droid. Kind of, I could almost see something like that happening. But yeah. So, Grogu goes off with Luke. I have a feeling they're going to somehow stay in contact. Because Luke kind of like Ahsoka, does know the dangers of attachments. But unlike Ahsoka, Luke knows that attachments, while dangerous, doesn't have to be. Because, it was Vader's attachment to Luke that redeemed Vader, that redeemed Anakin. Ahsoka may or may not know that, but she clearly remembers that Anakin fell because of his attachments. That's probably all she actually really knows. I mean, even if she knows that Vader's Anakin saved Luke, has she really processed that? We can ask all those questions, but I think Luke actually semantically probably makes the most sense because he's the only one who's had a positive of the potential for user survivors. Luke is the only one who could. We know Ahsoka wasn't going to show up, and she knows the dangers of attachments. Cal Kestis and Luke are the only two that could reasonably show up, and Luke is probably the only Jedi alive who has any knowledge of that attachments are not always a bad thing if properly handled. And I have this theory that Jedi need to be trained before they grow attachments or after they grow attachments and are fully matured. That's just my theory. Anakin was at that bad age where he was too old and since he's already developed attachments, but not old enough where he's learned to let go, and that some things just have to be. He hasn't matured yet. In other words, but getting back, Luke knows attachments. He knows that they can be dangerous, but also that they can be good if properly, managed properly in a sense. He knows that probably better than any other potential surviving Jedi. We don't even know if Cal Kestis is alive, and his opinion on attachments. But I have a feeling it's very much more in line with Obi-Wan Kenobi, much more doctrinal, if you will, to the Jedi Order. And Ezra's missing, of course. That's why Ahsoka's looking for Thrawn. But that's just kind of stretching this review content, if you will. But that is pretty much the episode. Oh, I forgot this. Din takes off his helmet to say goodbye to Grogu. Oh. And while I don't know if he turns around, so I don't know if Bo-Katan, Sasha Banks' character, Fennec, and Cara Dune see Din's face, but Luke does, and Grogu does. So that means of the people alive, we can say for sure that have seen Din's face are Luke, Grogu, and Bill Burr's character from the previous episode. And I'm using alive purposely for this, because a bunch of dead Imperials have seen Din's face. So we don't know if the people behind him have seen the front of his face, only the back of his face. For sure. But I did always, pretty much, basically once this season started, figure, and especially after Grogu was captured by the Empire, I always did kind of figure Din would somehow need to take his helmet off to save Grogu. That is pretty much what I was expecting. Didn't quite expect him to take off his helmet for a goodbye, but I did expect him to take his helmet off in this episode for what was to be a tender moment showing the connection between him and Grogu. I always figured that was probably going to happen in this chapter. And that's where the episode ends. And the episode ends. It's unresolved on who's going to own the Darksaber next. Probably that's what we're going to get in Season 3. But, if you stayed after the credits, there was a post-credit scene. This is probably the first post-credit scene we have ever gotten in Star Wars. And guess what? Fennec and Boba Fett take Jabba's palace, now ruled by Bib Fortuna, who put on some weight, by the way. So Bib Fortuna somehow survived the events of Return of the Jedi in the Sandbarge, if he was even on it. He actually did in Legend survive, and I think I read a canon story where he survived as well. But the presence of Bib Fortuna surviving and trying to take over Jabba's empire was already established in Legends and I think canon as well. And it seems like Boba Fett and Fennec are now going to be taking over for that crime empire once again. That's the impression I've gotten. And that. It's a very neat scene. I'm not going to talk too much of it. But it ends with this. It's text on the screen. The Book of Boba Fett coming December 2021. Now, there's a couple of things that could be. Could it be the next book in the Mandalorian saga, in the Mandalorian series, if you will? Because think, we've had chapter numbers, chapters 1 through 16. That would be a short book, mind you. But books are typically divided into chapters, not episodes, chapters. So was this first book we got the Book of Grogu, the Book of Din, Djarin, or what? And some people are expecting maybe the Book of Boba Fett is an actual book, or maybe it's going to be another series. I wouldn't be surprised if it is the second book in the Mandalorian series, if you will. So whether or not Season 3, though, is a part of that, is part of that book, or the previous book, which we don't have a name for yet, it could be unknown. But I do kind of I have a feeling we're going to still follow Din somehow in the next season of The Mandalorian, which, while there's been enough evidence to suggest that we are getting a third season, and all that. Jon Favreau has said it himself, I believe, that they're working on Season 3 already. So I have a feeling whatever we're going to get in Season 3 is still going to be very focused on Din. But with Fett, I think they're setting this up for either maybe a standalone episode, if you will, a special, if you will, which I think would be kind of neat. Also, I was scrolling through the comment section on Star Wars Explains' review of this episode because it's like seeing what other people have to say, and this one person says he from the title of the episode that I forget the user's name, but that he expected that Luke will come in and say, "I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to rescue you," which I'm gonna say, if somebody does not create that edit, whether they just dub the audio in or splice the footage together, I don't care. But if somebody doesn't create that, I would lose my faith in the Star Wars fan community. In the good Star Wars fan community, I should say. The ones who just like having fun and enjoying Star Wars. So I think that is where I'm going to end this review. I don't really have any more to say after that. End on a nice good high note, and Baby Yoga. I combined Grogu and Yoda together. So Baby Yoda Grogu was just so cute. And I kind of wish that Din had told Luke that Grogu's name was Grogu. Luke might be able to learn it through the Force, but I would have really loved that communication. I would have even loved if Luke and Din have had a small talk off camera. That the other characters speculated what they were talking about. But yeah. So we did end on a cliffhanger, but not. On Grogu's story, it's a natural conclusion, if you will. Grogu's basically going to school now. Meanwhile, the other story, the other plot, the Mandalorian plot, if you will, ends on a cliffhanger, not a natural conclusion. That supports the idea that season 3 will continue this and won't be picking up Boba Fett at all. But that's just my wild speculation. And my thoughts on the episode as a whole. But let me know down in the comment section, what did you think of this episode? Your thoughts, reactions, predictions even for season 3, what this book of Boba Fett will be. I would love to hear from you. Also, consider checking me out on social media, Facebook, Twitter. Links for that stuff are below, along with links for my website, my Discord server. Go check that stuff out, give it a peruse, all of that. Also, if you haven't subscribed or followed my channel yet, please consider doing so. And feel free to check out either the video or the playlist on screen now. And as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you, always.